Mm.
parenting's hard enough, and then you
Yes.
layer this on top of it, it's just adds a complexity. So Emmy and I always talk about how we we tend to focus on mothers because it seems like mothers are the ones that take the lead in most of this. But we also had a conversation about how our other kids or our partner, husband, might have perceived and handled it himself, and it's so different. I've had some realizations just in the last few months that my husband was coming from a very loving, different place where I thought he was my adversary at the time. I'd like to get your insight from the many people you've talked to as to what do you think the family dynamic is, or what was your family dynamic? How did you manage to support one another?
We had more conflict over this than probably almost anything
Yeah.
in our years of marriage because we're very different personalities to begin with. We already had challenges raising our children just because we are so very different.
Mhm.
I would look at a situation through one lens and thinking he was looking at the same way, and then have these moments of like, oh, you're not looking at it at all the same way
Yeah.
I am. And so just for us, with our strong personalities that are very different, we already had some challenges. And then as you say, you layer in the any mental health challenges, and it just exacerbated some of the conflict. And particularly as it just kept going,
Mhm.
just kept going and going, and for Matthew getting worse and worse, and so then we would doubt ourselves, and we'd start to doubt each other, and it's like, well, if you hadn't done this, I thought we should have done that, or the other person would say, well, I know you're really resistant to trying this, and this, so maybe we should, and so honestly, it was very challenging. And our other kids, because he was our youngest, his older siblings, the good part was they were very attached to him and loved him and were close to him, but also
Sure.
extremely
Yeah.
frustrated as they became adults and he became an adult, and them seeing the toll that it was taking on us. So first, if there had just been mine and my husband's opinions of what to do, now I've got my older kids who have opinions of what
Right.
we should
Yeah.
do or
And
shouldn't
they're
do.
older. That's right.
That's what I
He's
mean,
a
they are
baby.
older, so
Yeah.
they're bringing their adult perspective
Mhm.
to it, and so there just was a lot of conflict, and I find that when I talk to families, particularly those for whom the illness carries on and
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily improve, um, or very episodic, and those episodes can be, like the bottom falling out over and over again.
Right.
And something that I've learned even since, with my older children, since Matthew passed away, as we have unpacked slowly, not only the trauma of his death, but also the trauma of growing up with a sibling who had serious mental illness, for whom we often centered the whole family around his needs.
Mhm.
And it got again to the place of, is he coming at Christmas or is he not coming at Christmas? Is he going to come mad at everybody? Is he going to come where he loves everybody? So there was always the tension
Mhm.
of, how is he going to respond, or how is this going to be? Or we have a family vacation planned, and oh my goodness, he's not coming at the last minute, and everything's thrown into chaos. So there's so much chaos. There can be. It's
Mhm.
not in every family, but there can be a lot of chaos and a lot of conflict, resentment, um, lack of even understanding on the part of siblings and sometimes spouses, sometimes partners, of what is really going on here.
Yeah.
He or she is manipulating you.
Right.
You're enabling him or her. Those are such common conversations in families that have heard it all, have lived through most of it, and can verify that families need so much support, so much help with figuring out, even within the marriage dynamic. And then how do you manage a family where there's someone who so obviously has needs that are
Mhm.
great? I don't think there's a good answer. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer, as much as just to say, hey, listen, this can get really messy, and your family is not weird or bad or wrong if your family's experiencing some of this drama, chaos, conflict. It's so common, and you're not a bad family if your family is walking through some of that. All it points out is that we just need so much support
Yeah.
and so much compassion from other people and places and opportunities to dialogue with each other and glean from other families what was helpful in your family. Ah, maybe we'll try that in our family.
Mhm.
But again, just not walking the path alone.
Yeah. What was particularly helpful for your family in the healing process?
Well, in the aftermath of Matthew's death, we've all done a lot of
Mhm.
grief therapy, a lot of trauma therapy, recognizing that we not only did we look at his life differently and what we should do or shouldn't do, we all grieve differently. Every person grieves themselves in their own way. And so we as mom, I've tried to be very careful not to superimpose on my children that they grieve the way I grieve, that they respond the way I respond. And I've had to absorb some of their anger, some of their sense of, as it feels now safe for them to be able to say, I knew you were there, mom, but I knew your body was in the same room with me, but there were a lot of times I didn't feel you were present because you were present until you got a text from Matthew or until you got a call from Matthew, and then suddenly I would lose you over and over and over again. Your body was in the room, but your
Mhm.
mind and your attention was elsewhere, and I just got so tired of always feeling like my needs were not as important as his. That's hard to hear,
Yeah.
as a mom, that's
Absolutely.
hard to hear because I did not want that from my children. I wanted to give equal attention and love and care to know that I hadn't, and I wasn't always aware of it, and to absorb that without being defensive, and then to have to, like I said, absorb that within myself and not feel guilty because
Mhm.
often I feel like I would still make the same choices that I did because the level of his needs were that high. But I wish I had understood it a little bit more in that time. I wish I had been able to um, find ways to let my other kids know how much I loved them. But now I have the opportunity to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I was not able to be there in some of the ways that you needed. I I love you with all my heart, and I'll do the best I can from here to um, make up for that in the best ways I can. It's like I said, looking at reality is going to lead to grief, and from grief, you have the opportunity to make repairs, to start again, to acknowledge that you wish it had been different, but don't know that it could have been. So, how can we go forward from here and repair and rebuild? It's hard work. It's really hard work.
That's amazing. I think as a mother in any context, let alone the trauma that your family has been through, to be able to say to your child, I acknowledge and validate your experience. And I'm also doing the best that I can in the moment, and I love you and I hear you. I mean, that's just perfect.